Money FM 89.3, the best of Saturday mornings. Saturday morning sit down.
It is time for our Saturday morning sit-down discussion with Nirmal Ghosh, who is an author and journalist. Many of you may remember Nirmal from being the Washington bureau chief for the Straits Times, among many other things that he's done in his journalistic career. And Nirmal is joining us in the studio now. He has just finished his book that is called Trump's America, Backlash, Donald Trump and the Remaking of America Views. We're going to talk to Nirmal about this and figure out what exactly he's talking about. And it couldn't be more timely with Trump's judgment yesterday, overnight in the U.S. and this upcoming inauguration. Nirmal, great to have you with us in the studio.
Yeah, great to be back. Great to see you guys.
Yeah. Nirmal, tell us about the book. What is the basis of Backlash, Donald Trump and the Remaking of America?
Well, basically, the idea was that, people, the global opinion on Donald Trump in America is as polarized as within America itself, in many cases, right? You have people with very strong opinions wherever you go about Donald Trump. But a lot of people don't really understand how he came to power. You find a lot of people sort of mystified at the fact that, as you just said, he's a convicted felon. How did he come to power in America? And, in this sort of new age of, hot takes on social media, it's as if the world began yesterday. There's no historical context.
Yes.
Everybody forgets that cause and effect. And there have been, so this book was basically to look at the proximate factors that brought Donald Trump to power in 2016, because they are still the same today, or they've deepened, in fact, and also the longer-running trends in American society, some of which go back to the foundations of the Republic, right? And the tensions inherent in America that all basically came to a head in, perfect storm is an overused phrase, but it's tempting to use it again in this context, and brought Donald Trump to power. And it should be no surprise if you look at that historical context.
Yeah.
The deepening rural poverty in America over the last 20, 30 years, the coastal globalized coastal liberal elites sort of, having fun while there's a massive transfer of wealth to those elites, and a sort of hopelessness of middle America, if you go around, the anger at failed foreign ventures as well. Starting, of course, from Vietnam. If you look at foreign policy, for example, the sort of general consensus of the American public has been out of sync with the foreign policy establishment. They did not. The polls show that the American public were not happy with America's sort of zealous promotion of democracy abroad and stuff. Iraq invasion was a classic example. Then they went they had gone into Afghanistan, and they got stuck in Afghanistan, and for years and years. So these failed foreign ventures. So now this is a sort of that's what the backlash is. It's a backlash to immigration. There's always been waves of prejudice against immigrants, Italians, Chinese.
You go back to the Japanese 19th century for that in the U.S.
all the way
right?
back. So all this stuff came to a head. So this is basically to explore and explain all that.
I read the book last night, and I have to say I absolutely love it, and I thoroughly recommend it. I got so many questions. Let's start with the other side. How has the liberal elite, or liberal democracies and Democrats more broadly around the world, let alone US, have lost touch so badly with the blue-collar workers that they claim to represent? As I was saying to Glenn earlier, at the next G7 meeting, Keir Starmer could be the only centre-left leader in the entire G7 by the next time they meet. That's where we are. How have liberal democracies, liberals, Democrats in the US, how have they lost their way so badly?
Well, I think, what's really interesting to me is how insidious the bubbles are that we live in. We don't even know we're in a bubble. You and me we're in a bubble, right? And, it's so insidious and so seductive that we don't even know that we're in a bubble. Like Noam Chomsky, in fact, said something quite similar. He said that the general masses, words to that effect, he said the general masses don't know what's going on, and they don't even know that they don't know what's going on, right? And it was basically this liberal bubble, and everybody was all going swimmingly, and Americans were being fed with cheap goods from places like China and Indonesia and India and Bangladesh and so forth. and everything is going swimmingly. But they didn't realize that they had lost millions of jobs, millions of factories, thousands of factories had closed down, millions of jobs had been lost. There was a sort of, the American dream was increasingly out of reach of small-town, middle-class Americans. And, so concurrently, opioid abuse increased, the drug issues increased, crime also went up in some cases. And, when you have a democracy and you allow people to vote and change course, that vote will come through in a backlash. If you don't have a democracy, it'll come as a revolution.
Yeah.
Right? So I think it's just the insidiousness of the bubble.
What does it say to you, though, that Trump has been a very good salesperson for himself and his vision. And of course, even just in the last week, we've seen him throw out all these, crazy ideas, taking over Greenland and the Gulf of America and, whatever else, right? What does it say about Americans that they are so bereft of hope that they are willing to grab on to this guy who is flawed? Everybody would agree is flawed in so many ways, whether you're a supporter of his or not. And now, of course, convicted felon. What does it say about the desperateness of Americans? Back to your point of all of these years of problems that they see that have been growing in America, that they would choose him.
Yeah, basically, I think a lot of Americans have bought into this "Make America Great Again" rhetoric, forgetting that America has always been great. I mean, it's been a great country and a great civilization for quite a long time. But the foreign policy elites and establishment also, and the military-industrial complex and the political leadership have always been sort of talking up this theory that America is the greatest civilization on the planet has ever known, etc. We are the greatest country in the world. And now China is rising to challenge us. And the Chinese challenge is particularly scary because it's a different, not just another peer competitor, it's a different civilization altogether. And it is being called an existential threat. So when Donald Trump says he'll make America great again and take over Greenland, okay, so there are reasons for that. A lot of the stuff Donald Trump throws at the wall, there's a grain of truth in a lot of it. Some of it sticks, right? The takeover of Greenland is basically because there's oil and gas there. Yeah. There's mineral wealth, precious metals, the works, right? Panama, because Panama Canal, because there's a theory that the Chinese, is partly true again, that the Chinese are building, port facilities and whatnot to dominate Central America, right? So this goes, and Donald Trump sees himself, he wants his face on Mount Rushmore. Yeah. He sees himself as an emperor. As this is back to American imperialism. Yes. Unfortunately, this is paradoxical because Trump also doesn't want to get into wars. Yes. So the other issue is that there's a big question. Will he shed blood for the Philippines, for example? In fact, Rodrigo Duterte, some years ago when he was in power, once famously said the Americans are not going to shed blood for us. And we're not going to go to China because go to war with China because the Americans are not going to help us. And, that might be a valid question today. We have to get used to the fact that norms don't apply anymore. The so-called international order is out of the window. And it is, as John Eikenberry of Princeton said the other day, it is America now that we have to see as a revisionist state. Not China and Russia, but it is America who, under Trump, is possibly the revisionist state of our age.
Fascinating, Nirmal, what you were saying there about imperialism. And I was highlighting parts of your book. I've got a contentious question coming for you, but the rise of China is an existential crisis for a lot of Americans, isn't it? There's no two ways about it because you've got 2, if not 3 generations of Americans who've known nothing but being the number one superpower, genuinely believing best country, best democracy, best rule of law, best political system, and so on.
Best healthcare.
Don't get me started on that.
Yeah.
And there was one line in your book that stood out. You wrote, "I found a nation almost startlingly proud of its flag and intensely patriotic and proud of its military, something that anyone who's not American is always struck by when they go to the US. So here's the provocative question. Is the US too patriotic for its own good?
Yeah, that's a good question, actually. Yeah, I mean, this sort of flag-waving stuff actually became enhanced after 9/11, which was the first time the American mainland had come under attack. I mean, Hawaii, Pearl Harbor was not exactly mainland, and it was a long time ago. But this sort of 9/11 destroyed America's sense of dominance, superiority, or untouchability.
Imperviousness,
exactly. So I think after that, there was a rally around the flag effect. Interestingly, of course, that doesn't last very long. If a war overseas becomes protracted, people start, coming home in body bags, it becomes very expensive, then public support wanes very fast. But the patriotism is whipped up by populist politicians, and everybody has to wrap themselves in the American flag. Everybody. And it's now taking the shape of ethno-nationalism. White Christian ethno-nationalism that is now on the rise under Trump. So, this patriotic, I was stunned. As you said, anyone going to America notices it. At airports and whatnot, they give preferential boarding to military personnel. They even thank them for their service. And it seems as if this is a country at war.
Yeah.
And often it is. It is. It has been at war for a very long time, somewhere or the other in the world.
Another great line in your book: if America did not have an enemy, it would have to invent one.
Yeah.
This is classic populism. This is Orwellian authoritarianism. The perpetual state of any economy is built on war.
Right.
That is something that Trump is very good at tapping into. There are always enemies with Trump, isn't there? Real or imagined, he is always dealing with American enemies. This is classic, exquisite, almost populism.
Absolutely. I mean, he calls the media the enemy of the people very successfully. So, trust in the media has collapsed. Now it's only in social media. And, it takes many forms. I think something like only 50% or less than 50% of Americans read a book last year.
Right.
Yeah. I read that.
We were talking with Nirmal Ghosh, author, journalist, conservationist. After a 30-year career as a foreign correspondent with the Straits Times, he now has a new book on Trump's America, Backlash, Donald Trump and the Remaking of America. The issues around this are so complex. You lived in the U.S. for quite a long time, and how hard was it for you to really put this book together and do justice to the intricate fabric of issues around America, everything from populism to patriotism to, economic woes and evils and things like that? How hard was it for you to really get all that synthesized?
Well, yes, it was very hard, and I had to do it in 4 months.
Sometimes doing it faster is maybe better, right?
Yeah. You have to really, as journalists, as a foreign correspondent of 30 years, one is driven by deadlines. So it helped that there was a sense of urgency.
Yeah.
And you just cut down to the bone, right? So I zeroed in on a few themes. One was sort of the plutocracy, money in politics, and the other was, the tendency of Americans to be they're prone to conspiracy theories. And that goes back to the Illuminati, and it has a long history again, right? And then the peculiarities of America, the Electoral College, the white backlash aspect as immigrant communities grow by 2045 or around then, white Americans will be only another batch. They won't be a majority any longer. Then, since I covered Black Lives Matter, the big protests and whatnot, I did a little bit of zeroing in on the question of race in America and culture wars in the Supreme Court. And then, of course, a British friend gave me a clue. He said he was a veteran. He flew alongside American forces in one of the Gulf Wars. And he had this lovely line. He said, America is stuck in perpetual adolescence, guns, girls, and money. And so I focused on that and religion, morality, abortion, sex, the whole issue of rock and roll in the old days was considered music of the devil. So this has always been a streak in America. So I basically looked at these underlying trends, facets of the country. And I also made the point early on in the book that it is useful to look at America as many different countries, not as a single country, because every state is the size of a country, and some of the states' economies are among the top 10 in the world. Texas, California, and so forth. So I basically cut down to a few central themes and use that to explain America as much as I could in a quick book.
Yeah. One thing you do touch on with the backlash, which I thought was fascinating again, you mentioned there the culture wars or wokeism. I think only now, as the sort of post-mortems continue, are they realizing it might have been a bigger issue than people realized at the time. It certainly is in the UK and other countries where they're rebelling against it and populism is on the rise. You see what Elon Musk is doing right now in the UK. A personal example, when I went back to the UK, I was at Christmas, I was struck. My family members and friends and the tabloid media really were only talking about two things: boat people, being swamped, and wokeism, pronouns. They're more obsessed with pronouns than they are with fixing the National Health Service. Yeah. I'm not saying that one trumped the election alone, but things like transgender issues, pronouns, whichever way you may fall on those issues, there was an element, again, of this liberal elite focusing on issues that were not important bread and butter issues for the regular voters. Yeah. They overplayed the wokeism. Is that something that you would...
No, absolutely. And Barack Obama, in fact, said so in one of his speeches after leaving power. He said so. He said that, wokeism, we should not overdo wokeism. You can't just keep scoring points. And I found this in America. People keep scoring points on wokeism points, And
what do you mean by that, scoring wokeism points?
Well, basically, talking about things that, pronouns and so forth, obsessed with issues like that.
DEI, those sorts of issues.
Critical race theory, for example. Critical race theory, right? Like now, if you go like 200 miles in from the coast, you find a very different America. It's like in India. If you go down the highway in a state like Uttar Pradesh, you branch off 100 kilometers into the interior. It's like a different century. It's different people, different priorities. Everything's different, right? It's not unusual to find a Confederate flag on the back of a pickup truck in West Virginia.
Sure.
Right? It's not unusual at all. So
in fact, it's common.
Yeah.
It's not unusual. It's common.
You've only got to see the backlash this week to the California fires, with people saying, I don't care what gender, race, nationality the fire service or the mayor is. Yeah. Why can't they put out the fires? That's all I care about. Bread and butter issues again.
Yeah. So nobody likes being told, for example, that their grand uncle or somebody who was a hero in the Civil War or something was actually a villain. And it was your ancestors who enslaved people. Nobody likes being told that. So that's why there was a backlash against his wokeism as well. And then, under the progressive presidency of Barack Obama, same-sex marriage, this and that, wedding cakes or same-sex couples, all that kind of stuff. For Middle America, there was like, what is this? This is not what we grew up with. This is not the values we grew up with. And Trump, in some sense, also represents a return to the patriarchy.
So now that you've just said that sentence, let's flip this around. What is the opportunity for Donald Trump in his new America? Is there a good outcome, a possible good outcome to this?
From the American point of view, maybe, yes. I mean, this is the point about his remaking, quote-unquote, remaking of America and the whole the Greenland project. Now, the flip side is this is going to be...
It's a project now?
Yeah, I think it is.
It's becoming one, probably.
Art of the deal, right?
Yeah, right.
But I think the flip side is, of course, that every empire, overreaches sometimes. And then you lose control of the periphery. Now, if America goes forward with this, he could redraw the map. And for the American foreign policy elites, and Trump is not such a departure from American foreign policy as we would like to think. Yes, in certain ways, he will not wade into foreign wars. He will not invade other countries. He'd rather do deals and lose American blood and lives, right, and treasure. But American hegemony is non-negotiable for the establishment, right? And for Donald Trump, make America great again, hegemony is non-negotiable. So he wants to redraw the map. And with climate change, with global warming, there's going to be mass migration. He might say that he doesn't believe in climate change, but Greenland, with global warming, Greenland is going to be ripe for exploitation of energy resources, for agriculture. People can migrate to Greenland and so forth, and Canada, for that matter. But this is where the overreach will come in. There will be backlash eventually. There's going to be actual armed resistance. How long can America persist with these projects? He will try and redraw the map. He will be a pivotal president in American history if he manages to go this far, but he could also overreach and it cause the eventual implosion of America, which is under such severe internal divisions as we know already.
Yeah. How effective do you think he's going to be in the next 4 years? The reason I say that is I was telling the guys, I recently rewatched the brilliant satire Death of Stalin. I don't know if you've seen it. It's magnificent. And when Stalin is incapacitated, you're seeing this power play out between Beria and Khrushchev and Malenkov and so on. And I sort of draw allusions. No, I'm not comparing Stalin to Trump. What I'm saying is this power play playing out now between Musk and his tech bros and maybe Bannon in the background and the Project 2025 fellas. Do you see that happening, a power play playing out behind the scenes, number one? And who will have the power going forward? He is an old man. There is talk about his mental capacity. Will he be the man on the throne, or will other people be pulling the strings?
Yeah, so the knives will be out on 20 January already.
Yeah.
People will be maneuvering for the midterms. As you said, he's an old man, one-term president, right? He has a lot of power on the face of it. He's got Congress, he's got the Supreme Court, basically on his side, conservative Supreme Court, right? He can do pretty much, he's got the immunity judgment. He's immune from whatever he does in office, basically. He can do whatever he wants. He has a lot of power, and from what I hear from friends in D.C., they are going to, quote-unquote, move fast and break things. They don't care. The norms, again, are out of the window. I mean, I don't think we even prepared for what's going to come. He's going to turn it upside down. So a lot of power there in the short term, executive orders and so forth, immunity from, potential crimes in office even. But he's not the only heavyweight in the room. Like, there are governors of big states who are maneuvering. Everybody wants to be president. There's this old joke in America, like every senator, every governor looks in the mirror and sees a potential president. So he's the biggest heavyweight right now, but he's not the only one. And there are others, and there's some indication of there are a few governors, I think, who are forming a so-called coalition to prepare for a post-Donald Trump world. And remember that when a movement like MAGA is dependent on one leader, and J.D. Vance is really not up to it, not as of now. He might rise to the occasion, yes. When a
where's he been? Like, we haven't even seen him for weeks, right?
But this is the problem. You can't outshine the president, right?
Yeah.
But Musk is president.
Musk is different, yeah.
Right? You know what I mean, though, right?
So the Stalin reference is valid. It's the cult of personality.
It's a cult of personality, and when that personality suddenly disappears, suppose something happens to Trump.
There's a vacuum.
Out of power or whatever, something happens.
Yeah.
Will that movement then dissipate? What will happen to the movement? We don't really know.
So what about, as Glenn mentioned, what about Musk? I mean, depending on who you read, he's the most powerful man in the world, second most, third most. Where do you stand on the Musk element, the elephant in this huge room?
Yeah, I think this represents a confluence of political power, and it's the oligarchy. Yeah. And unfortunately, there's been a massive transfer of wealth to the top 1% in America, and this is really the peak capitalism, really, right? But at the end of the day, Donald Trump is the commander-in-chief. At the end of the day, as long as he's the president, he does have the whip hand, and Musk can, say whatever he wants. But someone with an ego and a power the size of Donald Trump's, I think Elon Musk will have limits.
Yeah.
That's my personal theory. I could be completely wrong.
Well, he managed to sideline Bannon early on, didn't he, in his first presidency? Everyone thought Bannon was going to be the power behind the throne, but he sidelined him pretty quickly, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, he did. I mean, it's a very disturbing development, this marriage of big money and political power.
Yeah.
But again, if you go back to Soviet Union, there's always who is the real power? Is it the president? Is it the intel chief? Who is going to, come out on top at the end? So that is a question which remains to be answered.
Nirmal, we got to go. But last word to you with your book, Backlash, Donald Trump and the Remaking of America. What do you hope readers will get from this book? What is the main takeaway that you want them to finish?
I hope readers who are now deprived, as I said at the top, deprived of nuance and context and history by getting the news from 2-minute takes, 2-second takes on social media, will understand there is cause and effect. And there are historical currents that keep repeating themselves. And you can learn from history. We should and can can and should learn from history to understand where things have gone wrong and where could be heading next.
And could you give us a little bit of hope for 2025 to finish?
That's a bit of a tough one. On the other hand, I think we are obligated to hope. We must hope. We should not lose hope on many different things, including the existential threats of biodiversity and climate change. I think we are obligated to hope and to work like hell to make sure that we need to work for a better world.
Nirmal Ghosh, author, journalist, podcaster, conservationist, and has the new book, Backlash, Donald Trump and the Remaking of America, out this weekend. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you very much.
To listen to more great interviews, download our podcasts at audio.sg or download the audio app. That's AWEDIO, audio at the App Store and Google Play.